This is a condensed list of some of the jobs I've held over the last 15 years. Waitress, babysitter, software developer, nanny, bartender, hostess, UX designer, actor, YouTuber, tutor, interior designer, and many more. I've had experience with lots of different jobs, each with varying levels of pay, passion, stability, and most notably, varying levels of external validation. How much do people approve of me working this job? What do they think it says about me that I have this job? What do I think it says about me? External validation, often determined by a formula of pay plus status plus impressiveness, three factors that usually did not correlate at all to how fulfilled I was in that job. But for most of us, it is really hard to value our own sense of fulfillment more than we value our desire for external validation. It's very difficult. And it's very human. It's a lifelong balance and I have a lot left to learn, and being a public internet personality is giving me quite a boot camp lesson in my relationship to external validation. But through the years, I've been able to make meaningful changes to get myself closer to fulfillment. So I wanted to share what has helped me. I hope it helps you too. To be clear, when I talk about fulfillment, I'm not talking about us all quitting our desk jobs to pursue a passion. Like, obviously, that doesn't make sense for plenty of people's situations. But I found there's a lot of different ways to find fulfillment in your work. A fulfilling job could mean one that funds the logistics of your life and lets you clock out at the end of the day so you can spend more time with your bowling team. That's a very fulfilling job. It makes your life possible. And then when that next promotion comes around, or that shiny title that would really impress people, but it would also mean more responsibility and longer hours and less time with the bowling team, that's this moment of fulfillment versus external validation. And it crops up for all of us in all of our jobs. So to me, pursuing fulfillment means taking an honest look at like the recipe of your professional life and asking yourself, what nutrients am I missing here? More interpersonal connection, more flexibility, more feeling challenged, more feeling valued, more free time to spend on passions. Whatever fulfillment looks like to you, it often flies in the face of external validation. And there's no way I can talk about how I learned to make more fulfilling choices without talking about one of my greatest mentors. Author, journalist, you've read her work in the Wall Street Journal, the New Yorker, the Economist, the Washington Post, the Atlantic, the New Republic. She has just written her first book that has received a huge amount of early praise, and she happens to be my big sister. Okay, now you need to sit here. Just come sit. Why do you sit down like that?
How did I sit down?
You slid.
I'm sliding into place. Hello, YouTube.
There's been a lot of interest in Elizabeth. Don't slurp too loud. There's been a lot of interest in Elizabeth. It's very well deserved. She is a genius and she's a kook. Do you not want me to call you a kook? I won't call you a kook.
You're free to call me a kook.
Thank you. And she's also one of the biggest supporters and cheerleaders and problem solvers for me in my professional life. She doesn't like to admit it, but she has a big bleeding heart.
No, it's a secret. Tell no one. Deepest, darkest secret.
So I wanted to talk today about some of the ways that she has forged and opened up my professional life decisions. And we're also going to double click into her and her career because it's very interesting. Don't mock me.
Sorry.
Elizabeth has always been one of the biggest supporters and encouragers. One of the things I remember most clearly was my first career was as an actor. I've talked about that a bit in other videos if you want to hear more. And I eventually came to hate that career. I was so miserable in it. And in that case, the threat of external validation in my mind was that people would think I was such a failure if I quit this thing that I was very publicly pursuing for a long time. It can be scary to take a leap into a passion, and it can be also really scary to kind of surrender. But I became so miserable that I just had to, and you were the person who sat on my couch in New York with me, and I cried, and we kind of problem solved what the next step would be that could bring fulfillment into my life.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's one of the things that you were really good at, and one of the things that I would suggest everybody seeks out. Probably someone on the outside who can look at you and really help to honestly evaluate what are your unique talents, what are your unique skills that you would hope to incorporate into your work.
Well, I had forgotten how worried you were about like what people would think if you quit acting. I forgot about that till you mentioned it.
It was one of those things that wasn't just my job, it was my identity, and that was part of the danger. And so to completely start from scratch, establishing your worth, your value, your purpose, your identity, and your job, it's very scary.
But I think you just have to completely detach yourself from the opinions of others. What I do when other people's opinions are upsetting me, or, I get attacked for something, the trick is to remember that everyone's gonna be dead. Can I say that on the internet?
That's the trick, you can say that, that's the trick. I can keep going.
No, I try to always view my life from this sounds morbid, but from the perspective of the grave, or from the perspective of centuries henceforth, like the future.
Yeah.
This person saying this about us, they're all going to be dead. No one will know who they are. They will literally dissolve into the sands of time. Does not matter. Does not matter. Only you are living your life. Only you get to experience your life. And so what they think of your life is completely irrelevant.
You're the only one who's lived it. You've said that to me about so many things. Like, I'm the only one who has to experience life from this body, in this career, living this job.
Yeah, so do what makes you feel good, and they're literally irrelevant.
It's amazing. I love it. Somebody put a question in here that was something about struggling with feeling confident in their work, always doubting themselves, and imposter syndrome. And is it true that you need like the arrogance to pursue something, the arrogance to believe in yourself? And I would say all I am is self-doubt. For me, I don't pursue something because I feel confident about it. I pursue it. Basically, I was like, the feeling is that like, if I don't do this, I'll combust. If I don't pursue it, I'll like, it's not even like I'll die. I have to express this.
I think the approach I like is more coming to it from a place of curiosity. Like, I wanted to find out what kind of writer I could be, to find out what you can create, what is in you, what are you capable of? Because you come out of school and you sort of know things that you're good at, and you have a vague inkling that you might be able to do something really. What is inside you? Like, what can you do? It's sort of we're always a little bit strangers to ourselves. We know ourselves, but we also don't know fully what we're capable of. So taking a bet on yourself and seeing like what might be possible.
Okay, that makes me want to talk about a topic that I think tortures a lot of people, which is this concept of like all the lives that we could live.
Yeah.
Even you, I remember at one point, there was like a couple years where you were really spiraling on what you should do. Mm-hmm. And you were like, should I go to law school? Should I be a lawyer? Should I get a master's degree? Should I get a PhD? Should I do this? Should I do that? I mean, you were in tears, I feel like, for a couple of years, and you'd just be like, Caroline, what should I do? Caroline, what should I do? And I was like, I can't.
It was a dark period.
I didn't know what to say.
I know. I was paralyzed around 23, 24, just after college, about what path to take, and about the problem of sort of all the lives we can live, and that when you choose one path, you are sort of foreclosing others. Should I go to law school? A lot of people were encouraging me to go to law school. It'd be a secure path, financially stable path. Should I become a consultant? That's what a lot of my peers were doing. And I always knew I wanted to be a writer, but I was so paralyzed because this was after the financial, recession. Newspapers across the country were shutting down. The financial model for how newspapers made money was changing because everything was becoming digital. Basically, no one was encouraging me to become a writer. No one.
No one was telling you to be a writer.
No one. And I would go around like trying to ask people and get career advice, and no one said be a writer. Like, they were like, don't. Because I was like, but I have to.
Yeah.
And so that's what was so hard for me, because I knew I had to do it. If I became a lawyer, I was afraid I would always regret never having found out what kind of writer I could be.
I feel like this is the thing that has been hard for me, and I think it's hard for a lot of parents to wrap their minds around, is like, just because you could do something and just because you probably could execute it pretty competently doesn't mean it's what you have to do. Okay, you could be a lawyer. You could probably be a good lawyer, like you could do that, but just because you could do it doesn't mean that you have to. And one of the things I think was really impressive with how you ended up eliminating law as a decision for yourself, I remember you went and you like interviewed, right? You interviewed any lawyer you could get a hold of, and what you found, like talk after talk with these lawyers, was that like most of them were miserable.
And I should qualify that by saying one of my best friends with a lawyer and she loves her work and she's found a really cool niche for herself. So obviously there are lawyers out there who are happy with their work. I was just afraid I would end up fairly miserable and I would always regret never having pursued something more creative.
Yeah. It's not that the characteristics that comprise being a lawyer are inherently bad, but they didn't match up with what you thought would fulfill you. I think a lot of people start pursuing a path not knowing what the reality of it feels like. It was like really important to learn to evaluate what the reality of that job looks like, even if it's not a career, even if it's just like a new position, a new promotion. What does the reality of that new title look and feel like, and does it align with your goals?
But I think it's also important to be honest and say there are times when I still wonder, like, should I have gone to law school? Should I have become a lawyer? You have to decide to live with the trade-offs. There's not the same sense of security. Being a writer is a pretty unstable profession, and you're taking a bet on yourself, and I still don't know how it'll pan out. I think a little bit like not knowing. There's something exciting in creating and not knowing like how this is going to pan out and what's next in your life. And I mean, it terrifies me sometimes. I have my freakouts where I'm like, I don't even know what am I doing next? I don't even know. But it's the narrative suspense of your life.
The narrative suspense.
Not having the narrative totally written.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have to keep writing it. I don't know.
That not knowing, the unknown, is like an ingredient that everybody craves to some degree. Some people crave it more in their life, some people crave it less, and some people don't want it in their professional life at all.
Right.
But I think we all need some degree of it somewhere, and that's the feeling of being alive. A certain amount of unknown, a certain amount of exploration, a certain amount of challenging yourself. But I think the key is just like being able to like articulate for yourself how much you need and where that needs to appear. Maybe the unknown and the adventure is in how you socialize. Maybe it's in literally how you travel. It can appear in lots of different ways, but I think for you and I both feel like it's a lot in our work. So, girls publishing a book. Already gotten a lot of critical acclaim. I know people are gonna have a lot of questions about the details of the book. I'm gonna link all the details about the book. There's a whole bunch of book events all over the country. She's gonna do a book club. I'll put all the details and link to the book and stuff. We'll talk about it later. But basically, I want to talk about this book because as if like publishing a book and doing something as risky and labor intensive as that already doesn't involve a lot of risk taking. The subject matter of this book has particularly involved a lot of flying in the face of external validation.
Sure has.
A lot of obstacles, a lot of controversy,
Yeah.
and a lot of taking risks and betting on what you believe in, basically. It has a provocative title. Tell them the title.
Oh, it's titled Shakespeare Was a Woman and Other Heresies. It explores the various heresies around who Shakespeare might have been. One of them is that it could have been a woman writing under a pseudonym, but there have been various candidates put forward for who really wrote the works. And my book doesn't argue that it was any one person. It explores the theories and the whole history of the controversy, and I go around and I interview all these people. Some of them are antagonistic interviews. Some people like really didn't want to talk to me and I had to convince them to talk to me. Other people, were excited to talk about the subject.
We got some questions about dealing with failure and embarrassment and overcoming obstacles. Do you have any thoughts?
Got a thought or two. 4 years ago, I published an article in The Atlantic about the Shakespeare authorship question, the sort of centuries-old debate over who really wrote the works of Shakespeare. And this would seem like a nerdy, literary, uninteresting dispute, except that it's essentially a forbidden question in academia. And if you tell me something's forbidden, then I want to write about it. Lots of writers and thinkers over the years, Mark Twain, Walt Whitman, Henry James, Vladimir Nabokov, Supreme Court justices, professors of philosophy, theater, psychology have all suspected that Shakespeare was a pseudonym for a concealed writer who was, for whatever reason, wanted to not reveal their identity, as many writers in history have. But within English literature departments, that notion is completely taboo. Shakespeare is the god of English literature. You do not question Shakespeare. And so when I wrote this article, I was really viciously attacked. I was called a...
She was viciously dragged.
I mean, it was crazy. I went to a really dark, depressed place because I was called neurotic, fantasist, conspiracy theorist, compared to anti-vaxxers and Holocaust deniers because I was denying Shakespeare. You know, this is not Pizzagate. You know, this is not a... There's a lot of really intelligent people who have looked at it, and it's a fascinating question. Essentially, it's the most, I call it the most horrible, vexed, unspeakable subject in the history of English literature, but also, it's also a great mystery. It's a beautiful, interesting, fascinating mystery, and it's ultimately, it's about how we know what we think we know about the past.
That's what I love about it. Like, the way that it just became like a psychological study of like the dynamics of authority, of being challenged, of belief.
It's essentially like an evidentiary problem between what we know of the man, William Shakespeare, born in Stratford-upon-Avon.
Who was a real person.
Who was a real person, and what we know about the works that were produced. So, for instance, they are full of knowledge of like Europe and politics, political history, classical philosophy, theology, law, and just, you know, brimming with erudition. And he had no documented education, may have attended his local grammar school. So the profile of him that we have from his documented life and the profile of the person behind these plays are completely different. It's a mismatch. And then the other thing is that in the period, there was a practice of using someone else's name
to write under. Why would they do that?
It was, first of all, Elizabethan England wasn't exactly a democratic society. You know, I mean, if you criticized the church, if you criticized the government, writers were thrown into prison. They had their hands chopped off. You could have your nose slit. That was a threat. Slicing of the nose.
Why specific a slicing of the nose?
I don't know, but it's listed as one thing that can happen to writers.
That's insane. Wow.
Slitting of the nose.
Your nose would be so slit right now.
So the article kind of blew up. A lot of people either loved it or hated it. Remember how depressed I was that month?
Yes, I do.
A dark, dark cloud. It was dark because it's humiliating and mortifying as a journalist to be attacked like that. I never had that experience before as a writer.
It was shocking.
But this was also so fascinating to me. Like, how is it possible that Henry James, Mark Twain, Walt Whitman, Vladimir Nabokov, Supreme Court justices, and even some Shakespeare professors would quietly admit to me, quietly in interviews, that yes, they have doubts about who wrote the works.
But they would say, don't quote me.
But they don't want to be on the record, and it's forbidden to talk about. I mean, that's crazy.
It really does become like solving a murder mystery. You've described it to me before as a game of Clue, where people are like giving private confessions, but they don't, you know, they want to be off the record. And
also just the fact that people will get so riled up, so emotional, and even furious about a question of who wrote 400-year-old plays, you know? That tells me there's something there. And after I first wrote the Atlantic article, one of my editors was like, why are the responses so crazy? This is crazy. You know, this is just a debate about Shakespeare. No one's life is at stake here. No one's dying. No one's losing their rights. You know, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And I couldn't fully answer her at the time. I knew it had something to do with the way Shakespeare functions as a secular god in our culture, and I knew it had something to do with sort of British nationalism and the way, you know, the place of Shakespeare, especially in British culture, but also in American culture, because we've sort of adopted him as an icon of the American dream, a boy who came from nothing and made himself immortal through words, you know. But so I wanted to answer why was this so taboo? Why is it forbidden to ask this question about Shakespeare? You know, so the book is about Shakespeare, but it ends up being about all these other things, about history and class and nationalism, imperialism, and the nature of belief. Publishers and editors were reaching out and asking if I wanted to do something more with this, how I, you know, if I would expand it into a book. I knew it would be something I would get attacked for all over again. But to me, I just decided I had to separate myself from that need for external validation and write about something just because I thought it was interesting. I do feel the personal sort of journey I went on while writing this book, you know, the challenges that I've, like the things that I put myself through, the demons I felt like I was wrestling with. I mean, months.
You've been possessed as far as I'm concerned for like the last 2 years.
The nights that I just didn't sleep all night because I wrestled with so many demons. And after I wrote the Atlantic article 4 years ago, I received this message. I'm getting all these tweets are coming at me, attacking me. Some are praising me, some are attacking me. I hated Twitter so much. Oh my God, absolute torture. But I got this message on Twitter from a professor saying, very prestigious professor at an Ivy League university, saying, yes, of course, Shakespeare could have been a pseudonym or a scam or a committee of various people. We had lunch and we were talking, and as we were talking, I realized that I was in some way looking for his blessing to write the book, because I loved my Shakespeare professors. I was a teacher's pet. I was always the perfect little student who got A's on all her papers and wrote awards. And so for me personally, to detach myself from that and sort of go against them and be critical of the people I once revered so much
and wanted external validation from.
I wanted their validation more than anyone's. I wanted my teacher's validation. Has been for me a huge personal journey
of having to separate those two.
Yeah, and let people whose validation I sought so fiercely become critical of me.
Wow.
Because I'm saying something that they don't like.
Turning your back on the approval you've sought your whole life.
That's true.
We all have that thing.
I suppose it's an evolution of, you're maturing as a writer and as a thinker when you can separate yourself from the people whose validation you once sought and stand on your own and write something that you think is just simply interesting.
Yeah, it's so inspiring. Because it's so, courageous.
Thank you.
I got freaking goosebumps, girl! There's one thing that is starkly missing from this conversation. People asked a lot of questions about, which was work-life balance. Something that we're all trying to figure out, and I think it's something that you have to continue to recalibrate probably throughout life as things change, your goals change. It's one of my biggest goals to work on this year. So I'm working on that. I would say you have the worst work-life balance I've ever witnessed. If some people think mine is bad, yours is does it exist? Yeah, so we're not gonna sit here and say that you exemplify work-life balance. No. That would be a lie. I think it's almost valuable to say how much you've sacrificed. These things take sacrifice.
Yes.
And it's something that...
You don't just breezily write out a book with, a deeply balanced life.
I literally, you're almost always just at your computer, I feel or in front of a book.
I mean, partially it's the subject. I had to figure out all do so much reading and research for it, and it's just a massive, massive subject. But also I think, when you have a massive, ambitious project, it does take you over. I felt like I was living in the world of my book. You're living with the narrative and the structure and thinking about it all the time, and the words and the language and the characters, and it sort of possesses you. I did feel possessed a little bit while I was writing it.
You felt possessed to me.
Yeah, but you know what? I know that's kind of crazy, and I when I'm going through it, I think I hate it, right? I'm complaining about it, and I wish I could just go relax and do something fun and carefree. But the truth is, the moment I'm not doing that, then I'm bored.
Yeah, then you're also crazy.
Yeah, so I think to some extent I feed on that, and I like it, and I like being completely consumed by a project.
It's definitely your addiction and what compels you. And I also think there's a big difference. I think work-life balance looks and feels very different when you're actually working on the thing that is your baby. Whether it's your book, whether it's your YouTube channel, whether it's the business you're starting. For me now, it's my videos. I just care about them. It's not just my job, it's my heart.
Right.
When I'm off the clock, when I go on vacation, I'm spending the whole time working on videos. When I'm in the shower, I'm just standing there thinking about videos and what I want to do. There's not even a choice. It's what I want to spend my time doing. So work-life balance does start to look very different. And it's maybe you're not sleeping a lot, but it's not necessarily draining. I don't know if there's a way to fall in love, to start a new business, to pursue a new career without being a little obsessive about it for a period of time. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's the end of the world. And I think a lot of it has to do with both communicating with people in your life, with being honest with yourself about this is an obsession right now. Maybe that obsession is your kid. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's dating. Maybe it's your book you're writing, whatever that thing is. But I do think it's okay when I kind of give people a little permission. It's okay sometimes to be obsessive. I think it's also important to put a timeline on it.
Yeah.
What am I saying? I don't know. You have terrible work-life balance is my point.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for being here today.
So much fun.
It's the best.
Thank you for having me.
Don't thank me sarcastically. Don't thank me sarcastically. But truly, this is the person who is informed and inspired the most of my professional decisions, and I've wanted it's just like I wanted to share what you shared with me with the rest of the world. Deserves to hear it. Take what resonates with you. Everyone's on their personal journey. I hope you got a little kick of inspiration and maybe a couple ideas about like what you feel like you're missing in your own nose slitting journey. And the story's not over. If you wanna keep tabs on Elizabeth's story and see how it ends, see if this nose gets slit.
See if my nose gets slit.
I'm gonna link her book below.
The book
is coming out on May 9th. May 9th, 2023. A couple days after this video is coming out. But you can pre-order it now. It's coming out and there's a bunch of events.
I'll be talking about the book and doing Q&A with other writers.
There's one at the Strand in New York.
The Strand in New York with Andre Aciman. He wrote the novel Call Me By Your Name.
Call Me By Your Name.
Which was made into a movie with Timothée Chalamet. I'm doing an event in LA with 𝐿𝐎𝐈𝐿'𝐿, and then I'm doing one here in DC at Politics and Prose. That will be on May 11th.
May 11th. Find us there. I'm stoked. We'll put all the information in the video description. And we're going to be doing a book club. A lot of people requested a book club. So we're gonna do like a live book club event.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna be on YouTube Live or Instagram Live, but one of those. It's going to be on June 11th, Sunday, June 11th, because I wanna give people time.
You'll have a month to read the book.
Get
it, read it, then we'll do a book club where we can all talk about it, and I'm excited to discuss it with you guys.
Yeah, so that's the one thing I will say. If you want to be involved in the book club, we'll do like live questions and we'll do some kind of live whatever where you can engage about the book and just chit chat and everyone eat snacks. I would buy it ahead of time so you have time to read it by the 11th.
It'd be so much fun to share it with people because it's been this thing that's been living in my head for so long. So for it to actually be able to talk about it with people who have read the book, like it was so much fun to see you reading it and mom and dad reading it.
Oh my god, I just like covered, look at my books right over here.
So it was like,
the whole time I was just like taking all my favorite notes.
You took so many notes.
I took so many notes and I would always be like, this part made me giggle.
I love the notes.
I love the notes too. I'm never giving this copy away.
It was like something I felt like I couldn't explain and share to people for so long.
Yeah, it was too complex.
Now I finally get, like, everyone can see the weird, crazy, insane world I've been living in.
The devil has come out of you and now it's in this book.
The devil has come out of me?
Yeah, because you said you were possessed.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm not possessed.
Well, two things are possessed now. This is your Horcrux.
My Horcrux.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Voldemort. Wait, do you want to read an excerpt?
I can read an excerpt.
Yeah, I can read an excerpt. Do you know which one do you want?
I know a fun one. Okay. This is when I'm about to interview one of the great Shakespeare authorities in Britain. So we had set up an interview. Then on the evening before our planned interview, he emailed me saying that he preferred not to meet me because I was an anti-Shakespearean. So he was bailing the night before our meeting and he didn't know who I was. And then he clearly Googled me like the day beforehand. I was like, oh, I don't want to talk to this woman. Because he figured out, I mean, he guessed correctly that I was going to ask him questions that he didn't want to answer.
Yeah.
So I wrote back, you know, trying to persuade him, saying, you know, we just have a pleasant conversation. I'd read his books. He still didn't respond the next day, so I sent him another email saying, you know, why don't we have tea? Because the English love tea, and that's a great way to, you know, get past their defenses. And I said, if you don't like my questions, you can just chuck your tea at me. And then for some reason, he was into that.
Then he agreed.
Then he responded like that. Yes, 4:30.
That's amazing.
All right, so this is when I'm about to
You can chuck your tea at me. Okay.
This is when I'm about to go speak with him.
Okay.
Sir Stanley Wells lives a few minutes' walk from the church on a street of modest brick row houses. I arrived a little early, anxious about the interview. We were starting out on very tense footing. When a journalist becomes an enemy, it is usually after the fact, after the interview, when the subject, who assumes your empathy, discovers that you haven't written what he wanted you to write. He feels that you've betrayed him, that you've been a wolf in sheep's clothing. But the journalist needs to appear as a sheep in order to put the subject at ease. I wished for some sheep's clothing. I was knocking on Stanley Wells's door simply as a naked, undisguised wolf. Come in, he said. You have to read the rest. It's a spicy interview. I'm not sure.
You freaking wolf. You're a literal wolf. I love that. If you want to read the spiciest book that's coming out this year, I'm linking the book below. You can see how this nose slitting turns out for Elizabeth Winkler.
Yeah,
it's happening live.
It is happening live, and I don't want you to know about it.
It's happening live.
So if you want to be a heretic with me and rebel against the authorities, and pursue this question.
And yeah,
Pick up the book.
It's my favorite thing I've read this year. It's my favorite thing I've read.
Really?
Yeah, freaking course it is. Which, like, I would have read it regardless, but it was just, it's so fun. It's so suspenseful. It's the kind of thing where you're like, oh, I never really thought about that subject. But then the more you learn about it, you're like, why didn't I know this? And it just makes the whole thing wilder and wilder. In a way, it felt like true crime. It feels like this investigation where you're like, the answers are out there.
It's ultimately a detective story.
Yeah.
It's a literary detective story.
I think because I love true crime and I love psychology, it's just like, becomes a page turner.
Indeed.
Yeah. Indeed. Indeed. All right. We'll see you around the channel soon. Bye. That was a scary looking salute. Do you want to do a different kind of wave that's not a salute?
I'm so bad at this. What did you do?
I just did a human wave.
Oh, okay.
Just a normal... Okay, great.